There's so many new questions tonight in the Trayvon Martin shooting. This after the special prosecutor announced a grand jury will not be used to determine whether to charge George Zimmerman. But first, we've learned that Zimmerman has his own website now. This is new. His lawyers confirmed the address, therealgeorgezimmerman.com. Currently, the website is down, but when it's active, it has an American flag and a statement from Zimmerman reading, quote, "I have created a PayPal account as I would like to provide an avenue to thank my supporters personally and ensure that any funds provided are used only for living expenses and legal defense in lieu of my forced inability to maintain employment." All right, now back to Heather in the Information Center. This is really getting interesting here. No grand jury, so it begs the question, will Zimmerman actually be charged with a crime?
Well, Keith, he no longer faces a charge of first-degree murder, but the special prosecutor can still bring other charges against him. State Attorney Angela Corey issued this very brief statement saying not only will she not use a grand jury, but she says the decision should not be considered a factor in the final determination of the case. She added there will be no further comment from this office. Meanwhile, in Sanford, a group of college students from across Florida calling themselves the Dream Defenders marched all the way from Daytona Beach, about 45 miles, to peacefully protest and block the entrance of the Sanford Police Department.
We want justice for Trayvon Martin, which means an arrest for George Zimmerman.
Now, the students cleared out after agreeing to a community forum with Sanford City leaders on April 19th. The leaders of the Dream Defenders also said that they spoke with Special Prosecutor Angela Corey. She told them she is still gathering evidence. Also today, we spoke to a former federal prosecutor who said don't look much into the fact that the grand jury has been eliminated. He said this whole case has really become political, with Angela Corey, even Governor Rick Scott, reaping the benefits of the outcome.
I think they decided to go grand jury because it was a political hot potato, but now they've decided, you know, maybe the state attorney will make the call and reap the political benefits accordingly. That's what's going on.
Our reporter Tammy Fields has been talking to a high-profile criminal defense attorney right here in the Bay Area just to get his take on all of this. What did he say?
Well, Barry Cohen told us that he feels like this special prosecutor is very courageous for what she has done by not giving this case to the grand jury. He also said today, which really surprised us, that it's very likely that George Zimmerman could get off.
Most prosecutors in these high-profile cases where the evidence is questionable or weak will say, let the grand jury take the heat. And they'll put it in the hands of a grand jury, and whatever the grand jury decides, then they're in a position of saying, well, don't blame me for the grand jury's decision.
High-profile attorney Barry Cohen takes his hat off to Special Prosecutor Angela Corey out of Jacksonville and her decision not to use a grand jury. Corey only has three options: file charges, drop the case, or send it to a grand jury. That last option is now out. So what does it all mean? Cohen doesn't know Corey and isn't involved in the investigation, but he says her latest move does give him some insight on what could be next.
What it tells me is that she doesn't believe that there's enough evidence to indict Mr. Zimmerman for first-degree murder. First-degree murder requires a certain element of premeditation, a certain element of planning.
Cohen says she may be considering a charge like manslaughter, aggravated manslaughter, or second-degree murder against Zimmerman. Cohen is not a fan of the stand your ground law.
But to shoot him, that's asinine. And to be excused for it is even more asinine.
But he admits, under the law, if Zimmerman was in reasonable fear of his life and can prove it, he is allowed to use deadly force.
Zimmerman could get off.
He could get off. He could.
Now, Heather, the grand jury, they meet once a month. Barry Cohen told us today that it is very likely that Angela Corey could still give this case to the grand jury. That is not a done deal. That does not mean it cannot still happen.
That's interesting. The other thing that you mentioned when you interviewed the attorney for Trayvon Martin's family, he said that they didn't even want a grand jury to be involved.
And one of the reasons why they don't want a grand jury involved in all of this, Heather, is because what happens in that grand jury is completely private. It's closed to the media. It is closed to family members. We would never know what was actually presented to the grand jury.
All right. Thank you, Tammy. By the way, we took a 10 News Facebook poll. Is Zimmerman less likely to be charged with a crime without a grand jury? The majority of you said yes, while only 11% said it would not matter. There is still time for you to vote. We'll have updated results on the morning show beginning at 5 a.m.